Hey everyone, Sumo Spiffy here. Welcome to Instant Banzuke for Nagoya 2023. If you see the Guess the Banzuke helper here and you're wondering, is this any different from the Guess the Banzuke drafts you've been doing? The answer is yes. It has a catchier name now. Alright, let's do the math and set everything up so we can figure out what to expect. Alright, there we go. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to draw your attention to before we get started. One, Juryo's in here now. And because Juryo's in there, we can get a little more in-depth with how we draw this up. We can actually put the guys down in Juryo where they're going to go. We don't just have to pull them off the Banzuke. So what you'll note is that, for example, Ichi Yamamoto is on the west side of the Banzuke when we're moving him over. But if we scroll up, he's on the east side over here. The reason for this is because of Kageaki being the only Maegashira 17. When there's only a half rank at the bottom there, what you end up with is a situation where they don't just count it as a full rank when they're doing the math. It is a half rank. So when we're figuring out how far Ichi Yamamoto has to go down, he's got to go, well, let's do Mitoryu. It'll be a little easier. He's got to go down 7 ranks or 5 ranks. So Mitoryu goes down 1 rank, and then this is a half, and then over here is a half. So now he's at -2. So then this is 3, 4, and 5. So from 16 east, he'll end up at 4 west because of that half rank. So anybody who is switching between Juryo and Makuuchi in either direction is going to flip which side of the Banzuke the math puts them on. Obviously, this doesn't make any difference with regards to where they end up once we sort them all out. But if that looked odd to you, that is something that you should know. Also, for my own organizational purposes, down at the bottom of Juryo here, we've got a whole bunch of dudes who are just lined up here. Let me find a different color for the pen, something that'll show up a little bit better. How's that going to work? Yeah, that's much better. Okay. So Enho, he dropped out, and Chiyono Kuni dropped out. They got no wins. So by math, they should drop out of Juryo, and they might. Chiyono Kuni, though, is almost a given because he only took 5 ranks to get down to Juryo 14 West, so he's kind of screwed. Enho, however, took 11 ranks to get down there, so he's got a better chance of staying. Toki Hayate, 6 and 9, he only dropped a half rank to go to 14 West, so he's still got another 2.5 ranks to drop. Obviously, Enho with 0 wins has another -4 to drop, but they're nicer to guys with 0 wins. And for a guy with 6 wins at Juryo 14 to stay in Juryo would take some extraordinary circumstances, which we don't have here. So these are the Makushita guys who have a chance of coming up. We've got Shishi, we've got Kawazoe, we've got Shiden, we've got Chiyono Umi. They're in this order because this is, or should be, the order in which they're preferred. Shiden should definitely come up at 4 and 3 from 1 east. Shishi should be ahead of Kawazoe. If only 2 of them were to come up, then it should actually be Shiden and Shishi. But I just got them listed by math order right now. We'll deal with that later. Final thing I'll mention here is that I haven't sorted them out by math because generally guys who come up from Makushita, unless somebody has to be placed below them for Banzuke reasons, they just get stuffed at the bottom of Juryo. And it's just their order relative to each other that determines where they go, not anything about, like, well, let's see which Juryo guys we push them ahead of. They don't do that unless they have to. All right, let's start up in Makuuchi and see what we got. Now, what we remember from last time, I hope, is Asanoyama and Ichi no Jo getting put at 13 West and 14 East, not respectively, with their incredibly good records at high Juryo. Ganoyama is 14-1 at Juryo 1 East. Remember, Ichinojo was 13-2 at that rank. Asanoyama was 14-1 at 3 East. So I think what some people are going to take from that is, oh, well, Ganoyama is not going to get pushed up above like Maegashira 11 or 12. That may be what happens. That may genuinely be what happens. So he could end up being like Maegashira 11, Maegashira 12. I think a maximum of Maegashira 10 is not an unreasonable assumption. However, I don't think it's necessarily correct. The question is, where are the holes? And now that I'm saying it out loud, I could have phrased that better. That's not the point. I don't think they're going to put Ganoyama at Maegashira 4 or anywhere near it. But where are the gaps in the Banzuke that make it easier to slot guys in? Remember also, Asanoyama and Ichinojo were locked in basically right next to each other. Ganoyama, Ochiai, Shonen no Umi, Atami Fuji, there are gaps between them. So we should not expect them to all get piled together. I would be very surprised, in fact, if they all got piled together. So we have to think a little more flexibly with regards to the guys coming up from Juryo this time. So I think the easiest way to do that is to shuffle everyone in Makuuchi around in the most logical way and not touch the Juryo guys until it makes sense to do so. So let's start that process, and we'll come back to it when we need to talk about something. All right, here's where we should probably stop for a second. So we've got Tamawashi, Takanosho, and Seru no Umi. There's nobody in front of them to the point where, even though in this instance I'm moving them all back to their old ranks on 7 and 8 so they don't actually lose any ground, there are 3 slots ahead of them that need to be filled. Well, who the hell's going to do that? Oho makes sense. Definitely. Hokuseiho kind of makes sense. That one's a little awkward because he was obviously doing really well, but he finished 8 and 7. Can you bump a guy from Maegashira 11 to Maegashira 6 on 8 and 7 if the circumstances call for it? Yeah, you absolutely can. It's been done. But is it going to happen this time? I think it probably will, because they don't have a whole lot of other options. But keep in mind, we have to think about not just where Ganoyama is going to go, because we got to place him first of the Juryo guys, but Takayasu and Wakatake Kage. Like, Wakatake Kage is not going to get kicked all the way down to Maegashira 15. He's not. Takayasu is unlikely to get kicked all the way down to Maegashira 11. So where can we slot them in as well? This is one of those situations where we need to move guys up logically, but also remember the guys who are currently placed physically further down the list and make sure we move them up when that makes sense. In this case, I kind of think Takayasu might just get dropped down to 7 East. So I think it'll end up looking like this. And bear in mind, you could swap Hokuseiho and Takayasu pretty easily. It's not impossible that they can move down Takayasu 5 ranks on 3 wins. Like, that's completely within bounds. They almost did that with Tamawashi. Obviously, they moved him down a little further last time, but, you know, that could be a thing. But who else could they move up? Now, do you think that they're really going to move Myogiryu in front of Takayasu? No, because Myogiryu maths out behind Takayasu, and they have more reason to bump Takayasu up like that. Wakatake Kage is just too far down, and even with this setup, Hokuto Fuji still gets saved a rank of demotion. So he just gets down to Maegashira 9 East. You know, that all looks pretty solid. So now what do we do? Myogiryu can move up, for sure. Myogiryu can move up really easily. Kotoeko can move up really easily. Do we put Ganoyama in here at 10 West? Maybe. We would have to bump Shonen no Umi down a lot further, for sure. But Tsurugisho getting bumped up a little bit further, I think that also makes sense. So let's keep looking. Chiyoshoma, 8 and 7, going up a second rank. That makes sense. Let's keep looking for where the logical gaps are before we start putting the Juryo guys in. Now, is this a logical gap? Maegashira 11 West. Kinbozan just gets dropped in there. Yeah, probably fine. In fact, you could have Kinbozan and Chiyoshoma get flip-flopped. That's a completely reasonable setup. Tsurugisho maybe ends up... Let's see here. Tsurugisho was... Okay, by math, Tsurugisho was down here. Chiyoshoma was here, right? Yeah, Chiyoshoma was ahead of Tsurugisho. And so these guys were tied. So Tsurugisho, I didn't even have to move him up. What the hell was I talking about? Kinbozan getting bumped up here. Nope. Let's do Chiyoshoma instead. Chiyoshoma could get here. Kinbozan could go here. I'm really confusing myself at this point with all the Juryo guys. But I'm trying to make sure I keep them where I can see them. Nishiki Fuji, bump him up. Tsurugisho, bump him up. This is all fine. This actually makes a ton of sense. Where do we put Ganoyama in? Do we put him in here? And then we put Shonen Naomi here. And then Ochiai like that. Well, no, now they're all piled together. And I don't think that makes a lot of sense at all. Also, where does Wakataka Kage come in? Well, if we put Wakataka Kage at 12, that's actually not bad. In fact, he could probably get flip-flopped with Nishiki Fuji pretty easily. You know, for safety's sake, why don't we put Bushozan at the bottom? Why don't we put him down here? So, let's see. Shonen no Umi, Daishoho. So, let's also look at this other aspect of the problem. You've got all of these guys here, right? We've got... Come on, pen, work. We've got all of these guys here. We got these guys here. And they have probably hit the floor. They're not going down any further. So if this is as low as they're likely to go, that means the Juryo guys are the ones that have to fill in the gaps because those are the only guys getting promoted into any of these spots. So I think the Juryo guys are really going to get shunted way, way down here. How many guys do we have in the division right now? I'm going to scroll up. Okay, so right now we've got 43. We've got 43 guys. One of them has to go. Now, who is that going to be? It looks like it's probably going to be either Endo or Bushozan. Well, let's see here. Why don't we finish fleshing out the rest of this thing? Do we bump Daishoho? Well, I do think they're going to let Ganoyama get in ahead of everybody else coming up from Juryo. So let's slide these guys all back. All right, so now Ganoyama is still ahead. Now Daishoho is between them, right? Do we move Ryuden up? I don't know. Do we move Takara Fuji up? So what happens if we move Ryuden and Takara Fuji up and move Shonen no Umi and Ochiai down? Now, Ganoyama was 14-1 at 1 East. Shonen no Umi was 11-4 at 1 West. So, logically speaking, there should be a decent space between them. Shonen no Umi was ahead of Ochiai, but not by that much. So, them kind of collapsing in together makes a lot of sense. Atami Fuji was a little bit behind Ochiai. Well, what if we put Atami Fuji behind Kota Shoho? Why don't we just put him behind... And yeah, why don't we do this? Because Endo is probably not going to eat the full demotion. 14 ranks even is a lot. Like, guys on 0 wins, guys who Kyujo out, usually get saved a little bit more than that. And what if we bump him up here? Does this make sense? Yeah, could make sense. Kota Shoho takes a pretty solid hit. Do Ryuden and Takara Fuji actually end up being the ones that get bumped down a little bit further? Why don't we do the shift and let's move Kota Shoho up here and see what happens. Oh, you know what? That doesn't look too bad at all. We just have to fix this issue down here at 17 West. Because bear in mind, we're going to have 17 West. 17 West is coming back because we've got 1, 2, 3, 2. That's 8, which means we've got to have 34 Maegashira guys, so we're going to have a 17 West again. That slot is reopening. Aoyama, Bushozan. Now, Aoyama saved himself. The only guy from Makuuchi who actually mathed out of the division going by the way it was set up in Natsu is Endo, and that was just barely. Are they going to kick him out to bring Bushozan up? No, there's not a chance. I don't see any way that happens. Aoyama and Takara Fuji arguably had to save themselves on the last day, and they did. Bushozan's going to be the one that takes that in the pants. So he'll go up to Juryo 1 East, I think, but he's not going to get out of the division. So now that takes care of the more complicated things, which is what do we do with the Juryo guys and what do we do with all of the injured guys who sat out some or all of the tournament. Juryo now, this should go more easily. Let's shuffle these. Ranks make a lot of sense, right? So Kageyaki probably gets preferred over Roga because he's coming down from Makuuchi. We'll put Bushozan ahead of him, though, because he should have been promoted. We got Matoryu, Ichiyamamoto. Now, Ashoma and Ichiyamamoto could get flip-flopped because Ichiyamamoto is coming down. That could go either way. Tamashoho, now this is where things are getting a little nuts. There was such a huge gap that Shimizu Umi goes up 2.5 ranks on 8 and 7. All right, that's fine. Tamashoho looks like he may go up 7, and Fuji Seiyun 7.5 on 9 and 6 wins. So this is 4.5 ranks above just what they could normally expect. Tohakuryu only 3.5 down on 4 and 11, so this is happening to everybody. Aqua only down 1 rank on 5 and 10, but these other guys, they have to demote Hakuyozan. He has to go down a little bit. Takakento has to go down a little bit. Could they make it a half rank? Yeah, sure. But they're not going to leave him in place on 6 wins. Chirina Umi staying in place. Chiyo Sakai up 4. So that's an extra +3. Tomokaze, Sushi Minada. These guys are all getting enormous jumps because of that huge hole in the middle that was left by guys like Enho, guys like Chiyo Kuni. And we still have 5 slots left. They have to be filled out by these 7 guys. So who stays and who goes? Well, we've got 4 reasonable Juryo candidates. Now, over on the other side here, you might see Yuma, who is 5 and 2 at Makushita 5. When I started looking at this, I was like, nah, they don't seem just having conversations about this stuff, they don't seem to be moving guys like that up, but I suppose it's possible. And in fact, he should be a better mathematical option than Chiyo Umi. Because if they're gonna, let's just get rid of this stuff. Because if they're gonna do it by quote unquote normal math, then Yuma at 5 East with 1 more win should be a half rank ahead of Chiyo Umi. But that's not necessarily how they make these decisions. So we know absolutely a guy with a winning record, just like someone at Maegashira 1 East is going to go to Komusubi if he has a winning record. Shiden, as at the top Makushita slot, had a winning record. He's going up. Shishi is the best of everybody who's here. All the Makushita guys. So he's going up. So that's 2. Tokei Haate, like I said, he's got to go. They cannot leave him up on 6 wins at 14 East. That's just, I mean, they could, but the likelihood of that seems really, really low. So let's assume he's gone. Who else do we have? Enho, like I said, I think Enho's actually going to stick. That one is not too controversial. You've got this many spots. You're kind of digging pretty far into Makushita to get guys. He hasn't fallen out of the division mathematically by that much. You give him a pass, especially because he was injured, Kyujo, and he's really popular. They're not supposed to take that into consideration, but it's nonsense to think that they don't. So, all right, we'll leave Enho in. Chionokuni, I mean, my dude, I really liked watching this guy when he was in Makuuchi, but then he got all messed up and he's just done. If it only takes you 5 ranks of demotion and you've earned 15, you gotta go. There's no way, there's absolutely no argument that keeps him in. So we just need to drop one more of these guys. Well, if 4 of these guys are staying, then Kawazoe has to be in. So then is it Chionoumi or Yuma? I have no fucking clue. I have no idea. So let's just start moving, guys. I'm just assuming that whoever it is going to stay at the bottom of the list. So we'll assume Enho is first, right? Because they're being nice to a guy with 0 wins. Chionokuni, Tokihate, they can go. Then if we do them in order, Shishi, Kawazoe, Shiden. If it's up to me, I think I let Yuma up because he had the 5 and 2. And when you're at Makushita 5, it's not like your schedule is any easier than at Makushita 3. But I don't know what they'll do. So with the caveat that that one could go either way, I'm just going to leave Yuma for now. So this is our Guess the Banzuke draft. We've got some pretty substantial moves up top. We've got some real question marks about where the Kyujo guys are going to end up. Because let's look at this one more time. Takayasu -5 on 3 wins, pretty reasonable. Wakataka Kage -12 on a Kyujo, it might end up being less than that. So, in fact, I was going to be done, but let me just make this one last change and see how this looks. What happens if we shift Wakataka Kage up to where Myogiryu is? See, Maegashira 9, I haven't done any research on this. That's why it's instant Banzuke. So Maegashira 9 from Komusubi as a Kyujo, that's not bad. That actually seems pretty reasonable. Myogiryu, who's still happy with this? Myogiryu, yep, he's happy, +4.5. Kotoeko, he's happy. Chiyoshoma, he's happy. Kinbozan, well, I mean, suck less. Nishiki Fuji, I mean, you were in the joy. This is what you do there. Tsurugisho is right on point. Then we got Ganayama. Daishoho was still getting under-demoted. Kotoshoho slightly. Ryuden slightly. They could even push Daishoho behind those guys if they wanted to. But there's a lot of question marks about guys with really, really bad records for one reason or another. To what degree they might get saved a little bit, and to what degree they're just going to have to eat their full demotions or close to it. But anyway, I'm sure I'll have different thoughts going forward, but that's Instant Banzuke. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that gets the thought processes flowing, the juices going, the conversations rolling, and I'm out of rhymes. I'll see you soon. We got the yeets on the way. Catch you later.